Matt. He's popping in.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Oh, hi. Okay, good. So this is being recorded, by the way.
Okay.
And we'll put it out through Interactive TV Today and probably TVOT as well.
Great.
So this is the first time I'm doing this in terms of using Blab's platform. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to actually, now that you're here, I'm going to broadcast this out
Okay.
to the world. And I already explained, what I do, editor-in-chief of Interactive TV Today and the producer of the TV of Tomorrow Show conferences. But
Sure.
Matt, why don't you talk a little bit about what it is that you do over at Youi?
Sure. So, I lead a marketing strategy at a company called Youi TV. We effectively looked out at the fragmentation across the TV landscape. And when it comes to building apps, it's very difficult because of that technology fragmentation. And we realized, though, that the video game industry had already solved it. They build a notion of a video game engine, and they build games on those engines. And our co-founder, Stuart Russell, CTO, had built video game engines his whole life. And we essentially built a user interface engine on the principles of video game engines from the ground up as a way to approach this fragmented app ecosystem. And so we have a core engine that gives us a C++, totally portable piece of code that basically means can run on any platform that TV providers want to get to. And we also run, just as games do, through the graphics processing unit so that all the graphics are fluid and immersive and just totally fun to use. But the cool thing is we actually plug directly into the tools that designers use to design UIs. And so there's no coder interpreting their designs. All of the nuance and all of the motion is actually ingested for free, and those designs can run on any platform.
So, and you launched Crackle, of course, the relaunch of Crackle across many platforms recently. Yep. And everybody has been, pretty wowed over with what you did on Roku in particular, because Roku is such a limited offering.
Sure.
And, we can talk at length about what you did there, but I also want to place this in context because you made this fantastic video, this little motion graphic, infographic called a TV manifesto for you.com. Is that the URL? What?
A manifestofortv.com.
A manifestofortv.com. And it's a great little video talking about, which I recommend everybody go watch. I wish you could play it in this environment. At some point, you'll be able to do that kind of thing here.
Sure.
And that's because you were, I think, you had made that previously to this Apple announcement, but you were particularly inspired by what just happened when Apple announced not only all the Siri voice control stuff for their EPG, Electronic Programming Guide, but their tvOS. Can you tell me why you guys are excited about this OS platform? I mean, a lot of people feel like, nothing happened.
Yeah, and that's actually a common refrain, and honestly, not just on the TV side, but they'll launch a new phone and people will say, hey, they're just sort of copying Samsung. And I think when you just look at a feature level, you can miss a target in terms of how to analyze the events. The truth is, they have the attention and the eyeballs that even Me Too technology is going to take off, right? There are wonderful TV technologies out there, but I think that I loved how Benedict Evans responded to it. So he's an analyst at Andreessen Horowitz, super smart guy, and covers the TV space as well as the mobile space. Mm-hmm. And I thought he summed it up well. He said, hey, what we learned today is that Apple has stepped back from aspirations that were previously much more lofty, in which they would cut out a lot of the classic TV providers and just try to go it alone and disrupt the whole industry. And I think they realized, content acquisition, other things made that very difficult. And so instead they've stepped back and they've said, hey, okay, we had this closed platform, let's open it up. And what they've done is, a very bold statement at the beginning, which certainly aligns with our vision as a company, which is, Tim Cook said the future of TV is apps. And what they've done is taken this closed platform, they've opened it up through harmonizing the OS with iOS 9, basically the handset OS. And now there's going to be an app store and companies are able to build apps. But there was a really cool moment in the keynote where they showed a few UIs, and they showed it was Hulu and Netflix and I think Showtime. But Tim Cook said something. He said, hey, we're giving people the power to build just fantastic UIs. And one of the things that is a very subtle nuance that I think is important is none of those UIs were baked in a template, right? And so what they're doing is they're opening it up and they're saying, hey, go build an experience that maps to your brand that you can drive consistently across all of the platforms. We're not going to try to, pigeonhole you into some kind of a template, but go be creative and go create an experience for customers. And I think that's an absolute wonderful day for the industry. It's a big change.
I don't think he never said the words though, and maybe it was sort of a PR moment lost, but he never said, we want to be an open environment. He never sort of used those words. No,
you're right. And I think he didn't necessarily need to. I think the minute that you open it up to, the SDK, the Apple SDK to develop apps, and there's an app store, it's something very analogous to what we see on, iPhone and iPad, where you can create anything from, a 3D kind of immersive graphics game to the TV UIs that we know and love, and basically your creativity is the limit on those platforms. And now this platform is going to mirror that instead of the old version, which was, very kind of constrained templates. And there's a few vendors that you can go to build apps for. Now they're just opening it up and saying, hey, just go be creative. But you're right. He didn't use the word open.
But what he didn't say was, you go ahead and develop apps, but can anybody go develop an app for Netflix? What's Netflix's opinion on that? What's their power of refusal, first right of refusal? I mean, that's an interesting dynamic right there.
Yeah, I mean,
he didn't say anything about that, I don't think.
No, I think, and just like on, iOS handsets and tablets, you can't just go create someone else's app and use their brand. But certainly if, a company like ours or other companies have relationships there and are commissioned to do that, they can now just, go build wonderful experiences for those brands. So it's exciting.
If you're just joining, my name is Tracy Swedlow, and I'm editor-in-chief of Interactive TV Today at itvt.com. And this is Matt Nelson, who's director of marketing over at Youi TV, which is located in Ottawa.
Ottawa, Canada.
All
these TV companies in Ottawa, Canada. We're across the hall from your Dedo, and SBL is here as well, so it's neat.
Where's Videotron and Rogers? Well, they're in Toronto.
And in Quebec, yeah.
Well, I'm in San Francisco, and Matt, of course, and Youi has been doing design work for our show, but really they're a platform developer, and they've been developing. They have developed a platform that is launching what's called OTT, or over-the-top offerings, into the interactive television industry, or also, it can be seen as the pay TV industry. Your customers are the broadcasters, perhaps, or the pay TV operators. You can work with everybody, but primarily right now it's the broadcasters, right? The content programmers.
It's actually both. So we do stuff certainly in big cable that's under wraps still at the moment. Our engine can reach anything from an RDK set-top box to handsets and tablets to a Roku to a Fire TV to the game consoles. Again, just because we've got that sort of C++ kind of gaming lineage underneath the technology, we literally just don't care about the OS. We run right next to the metal, so we can reach any of these platforms.
Okay, so one thing I saw online is somebody was saying that there's deep linking in between all of their devices deep into the OS, because a lot of the developers have access now to tvOS, and I'm kind of curious, have you guys taken a look at it yet? Maybe not, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's early. We have the SDK in-house, and some of our guys are looking at it at the moment, but deep linking is wonderful for the user, right? As a user, if you want to watch, I don't know, pick a show, New Girl, just to be able to speak it in and just say, hey, I want to watch New Girl, and have it show up.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't care where you specifically want to watch it from, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting watching Apple and Google approach this problem from kind of both sides of the fence. Whereas Google's opening up, certainly in a web world, just saying like, hey, forget apps, just go and search for what you want, and we'll bring it to you. But Apple then trying to take over from a search perspective, saying, hey, we're going to maintain an app ecosystem. We want to maintain that ecosystem, but we want you searching inside of apps. And so they allow deep linking inside of the apps. Google just says, hey, we'll just deep link to the web. And so it's interesting watching them solve this problem of, how do we bridge the silos across brands? Mm-hmm. Google doing it very much from a web paradigm, and Apple doing it more from an app paradigm. So it'll be neat to see which way wins.
It'll be interesting to see if people develop their own apps because you're able to search across many different services to find the content that you want. Netflix, Hulu, iTunes, and HBO. I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of metadata in there. It's all being provided to an Apple database. Are people going to be able to develop an app that does that search, or is there some kind of global search that's being offered and then nobody else can develop for that? I think search and discovery are going to be really huge opportunities if they are open up to that. Or are we just talking apps like we've seen on app stores in the connected TV marketplace, emerge over the last 15 years for looking at paintings or some kind of productivity app or something to do with sports. But to be honest, that's a whole topic I want to go into. But the first question is do you know whether or not search and discovery are opportunities? Do you remember what he said about that, or is there just one global search across all those offerings: Netflix, Hulu, iTunes, and HBO?
I mean, they spent a lot of time on the feature, and understandably, because it's a user-centric feature, right? I think there are certainly some paradigms that are more kind of brand-centric, right? So brands would love that it's maybe you don't have that, and you go deep into a Netflix experience or deep into a discovery experience, et cetera. But from a user perspective, it makes a lot of sense to be able to just see the content you want to see.
So let's, before I go into that question about apps, which I will in a second, let's talk about how do you think the Apple TV platform now with this tvOS compares to, because I'm sure you look at all these all the time, right? Chromecast, Roku, Fire, TiVo, PlayStation, and Xbox. Those are all the major players in the OTT platform marketplace. I mean, they're there's a lot of content offerings. We're not talking about that, but just the platform, just the hardware with software. What do you think about Apple TV's opportunities? I mean, frankly, well, go ahead. Why don't you answer that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've seen data that's shown that, the Roku platform had eclipsed Apple TV, and there was a lot of noise around that in the last quarter. But I think if you step back and put it in perspective, Roku's a wonderful platform as well. But until this point, Apple TV was really just a hobby, and they were very public about it just being a hobby. And it's interesting, actually, yesterday was the first time that TV actually made it to the menu of Apple.com, right? So it's no longer a hobby.
Yeah, cool.
And so I think,
I have a funny story about Steve Jobs for you in a second.
Okay. It's going to be interesting to watch it unfold now that, it's no longer a hobby for Apple, number one. And then number two, brands can go and be completely creative on the platform. And, I think if you layer on top of that the fact that iOS as a percentage of, users now is eclipsed Android in North America, and that's interesting to watch. But then certainly on the, demographic side, on the high end of the demographics especially, and, these are going to be some of the people that are, paying these subscription services, right, and having multiple subscription services and the bandwidth to consume it. So I would say it's very favorable for Apple, and it's going to be exciting.
It'll be interesting to see because the world, the sort of young app developing world has gone into mobile, and to bring them back to a connected TV, a big screen environment, it will be interesting to see how they make that switch. I know that the research says that millennials, as they age, go back to a bigger screen. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, because I think a lot of people say, I've cut the cord, I don't watch TV anymore, I just watch on my mobile device or I watch on my PC. So it'll be interesting to see, how they create an environment for innovation, and will they, participate in the community and come to conferences and have hackathons and things like this? I don't think so. They never have done that traditionally. They have been very secretive. So it's weird. They're opening themselves up, and yet I wonder if the culture of exclusivity, and secrecy will be maintained. But let me talk to you about secrecy for a second. I'm going to tell you about a Steve Jobs encounter that I had. Okay. I want to say it was 2006, maybe 2005. I was in London for a conference called D&AD, which is for the advertising community. And it's this huge, very glamorous event. I want to say like 2,000 people there, all tables of 10. Right. And this is the cream of the crop of the advertising industry, all in one place. And they I was invited by the organizers because, of course, I produced the TV of Tomorrow Show conference, and they liked what we were doing, and they wanted to invite me. So I got to sit at a table right next to the table over here, and Johnny Ive and Steve Jobs were being honored that day for their work with the iPod. Right. This is right before Apple announced the iPhone, I suppose, a year or two before that. And so, of course, the event ended, and all exciting, and I rushed over to the table and said, "Hi, my name is, I do interactive TV today." And he sort of stood there like, with this blank face. And I said, "So, Apple's in a really amazing position to look into digital TV, to potentially embrace this as an opportunity, as a technology for innovation opportunity." And I said, have you ever thought of working with television and doing something interactive with television? And he stood there and looked at me, and with this sort of, I don't know, like sort of semi-hardness, he said, "No." And then he just walked away. He said nothing to me. He didn't even say goodbye. I mean, I don't take it personally because I know that's his personality, But it was a bald-faced lie, right? Of course, we know that through Walter Isaacson's book that he had been thinking about TV as the holy grail of what Apple wanted to do for many, many years, So I just wanted to point that out.
I think one of the interesting dynamics in the background that I've been thinking about since the announcement is, we spend a lot of time as a sort of cross-platform SDK really looking at what's going to happen with device fragmentation. And it's fascinating because when you look at over a 5-year run, many studies are suggesting that smart TVs will take over from pucks and consoles, which is interesting. So mobile viewing of video will continue to rise. Mm-hmm. But that the whole, 10-foot puck and console world is going to give way to smart TVs. And so it's interesting seeing Apple do the puck model right now, and will that change those curves, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also, we're honestly just kind of stunned by it, trying to figure it out because, right now there's tons of different studies that will show 60% or 70% of people don't even connect their smart TVs and make them smart. They're not even hooked up to the internet. They're just there as a panel. Mm-hmm. And so I think it'll be interesting to see that unfold, but also just, Apple's boldness in terms of we don't care about those trends. We're going to chart our own. Well,
like I said, research says that as the millennials are aging, they're going back towards a big screen experience. So, maybe that's what they're anticipating. I know just as a parent myself, as much as I have cut the cord or now I've re-put the cord back in, I mean, I try all the different platforms, but as I'm aging, and my daughter, we definitely are finding more ways to use the big screen. Of course, I use all the platforms. Now, I also want to point out that one thing that they also showed a couple of apps when he announced the OS platform. They showed Gilt, which is a commerce offering for clothing and fashion, and he also showed MLB. Now, what was interesting about those apps, and I don't think people who don't know the interactive TV industry, I don't think understood the significance of those two things. He showed the one type of content offering, which is always the Trojan horse for interactive TV, which is sports, right? And MLB is incredibly innovative, as my husband says, from England. They're always finding ways to bring in enhanced content and interactivity into all of their offerings. They have been their Trojan, like I said, the Trojan horse of interactive TV. And the other thing that he showed is basically the future, the thing that has the most promise. I'm not saying guilt per se, but commerce. And I don't think people understood the significance of him showing those two things side by side like that. Other than the EPGs that he showed for Netflix and Hulu and HBO, which is the the bedrock of the interactive TV industry, the interface, search and discovery, but sports and commerce. I mean, it was like it was a masterstroke, I think, of whoever planned this. But I think it went past most people as to why those things are critical for the interactive TV industry and for something like an operating system like tvOS to take hold. I'm not quite sure how they're going to enable commerce. They didn't talk about transaction engines. Of course, they have the Apple Wallet, which they just announced, of course, this last year. I mean, when they announced Apple Wallet, I knew, what you could. I knew that all this TV stuff was coming, but when they announced Apple Wallet, because I'll get back to you in a second. Sorry, Matt, but several years ago, PayPal was going to be involved very deeply in interactive TV. They sponsored our events, and we loved that. We felt that a commerce component to television interactive TV was going to be blood through the veins of this industry, and they were really proactive about it. But then they kind of dropped out of that scene, and now we have Google Wallet and Apple Wallet and many other third-party providers. Having a commerce transaction engine in a TV environment is going to be explosive. I don't know.
Yeah,
it was.
It's interesting from our perspective. I think what we're seeing, we're a company that's, laser focused on sort of the TV market in a broad sense, capital TV.
Right.
And where our customers are taking us, and the reason that they are coming to us is, I think the notion of a video app is changing quickly. And so, it used to be that it was just, different ways to navigate to different video points. But what we're seeing now is it's like, no, it's heavy article driven in a news example, for instance. And there's tons of polling and, interactivity and social tie-ins. And what we're realizing now is that a lot of these apps are really less video apps, and they're just more becoming apps with video. And it seems simple, I guess, to say, but it's actually a pretty new thing in TV. And I thought that was interesting about the sports app when they showed the MLB app was there's certainly video involved in it, but it's also stats and interacting with other fans and all kinds of things. So it's neat to watch that happen. But to your point around being very deliberate around their segmentation, we were watching it, Joel and I, who were watching it together. And when they showed the iPad Pro, I just said, wow, they just revealed there's their segmentation, right? They started off with light productivity with bringing Microsoft on stage. They showed sort of hobbyist creativity in the Adobe suite. And then they said, hey, every doctor is going to have this in their hands, and they showed medical. But I think you're 100% correct in the TV side, where they just said, hey, it's about sports and it's about, commerce. And
I think that they're thinking the big screen TV, because the health industry is going to continue to explode, and people who are aging in their homes want health information on their TV. I think that's what they're saying, and they didn't say it out loud, but that's what that's about: sports and commerce, and I think what they didn't actually say was that the iPad Pro would be a platform for, I guess they did mention it would be a great place for video, for television and things like that. But they didn't go out of their way to sort of show you the connection between the Apple TV and the iPad Pro. But I think that's where a second screen could really take place. That's where a lot of, controls and games and things like that could happen. I'm not quite sure. They really kind of thought it through with having, a voice control. Of course, so many companies have really failed to deliver voice control, really good, accurate voice control with a TV remote control. Of course, the Stanford Research Institute were the ones that really put out that technology in the 90s. I remember going down there at Stanford to go see what they were doing, and that's where Siri came out of. Voice control and television has been something that people have been wanting to have for many, many years. And people were working on gesture and TV, and that's kind of gone by the wayside, Sure. But so I think I think they, in some ways, even though they're very good at marketing and the sort of glamour of it all, I think they didn't pat themselves on the back in an obvious way to show that that they understood all of these potential market opportunities. But if you understand the industry like we do, you can see right through that. I want to also talk about, what they also didn't discuss was, if these apps are going to be going out, what are the price of these apps going to be? That hasn't been discussed. The economics behind, let's say somebody does develop an app for Netflix. Does Netflix get a piece of the pie? That basically what they did was, as I tweeted, it's a foundation. And a company like Youi, you guys, is this something, do you see this as an opportunity for you to develop apps? Are you going to become an app developer for an Apple TV platform? Or are you going to continue being the B2B, platform developer for big, huge, powerful broadcasters like Crackle, or, you did the Show Me platform for Rogers Cable.
Sure.
What's your strategy now that is open to anybody developing apps. What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, it's a huge day for us, and really what it means is, any app that we've developed for any of our customers, right now we know runs beautifully on new tvOS. It just does. We know it does. We don't even need. We haven't even done it yet. The first hardware shipment's on the way, but we just know that it does because that's our technology and it's the way that it works. So I think the cool thing for our customers is that, we're selling them an opportunity to build a single code base that they know can reach any screen. And it allows them not to have to, what we call, look through the crystal ball and say, worry about, okay, Apple does this announcement. Who's the next announcement? And how am I going to get to that platform? With our stuff, it doesn't matter. They just know that they'll be able to run on it within weeks, which is really cool. I think, one of the interesting things that didn't get touched here, which is I think really important in the announcement, is that the complexity of building apps for TV still remains. And that complexity is based on two variables. Variable number one is these apps are incredibly complex in the back end. So it's not uncommon if you think about authentication and DRM and ad insertion, ad decisioning and analytics and the CMS, et cetera. There's an intense amount of complex back-end technology.
Yeah, they didn't talk about any of those things in that announcement. Nothing about advertising, nothing about addressable advertising. They didn't. It was like a very superficial.
And so while it's cool that it's open, it's still another platform that all of these companies need to develop all those back-end integrations for, typically in a custom way. And I think the reason it's exciting for us is all those integrations, those 7 or 8 back-end integrations, happen in a single code base, and we only have to do it once. So all those integrations sit inside that C++ code base, and it's just going to automatically run on top of the Apple platform. So our customers have an advantage, and they don't need to do all those integrations again. It's just going to run.
So do you think then that any third-party, any content company, like not maybe Crackle, but anybody could say, hey, I've got this huge library of content. I want to develop an app for the Apple TV, like all those apps that are already on their deck, right? Sure. And they're just going to be able to develop that. I mean, I'm not quite sure if they meant apps like small apps like you get, in the App Store, and they work and they're cute, and are we talking about a complete app that delivers a huge amount of library content? Did you get the sense of that is what tvOS is for?
Yeah, it's both. It's both. So I mean, you're going to have the biggest of the big, and we're already talking to them about it. Programmers, operators who want to build massive apps on there, no question. But I
wonder if they're going to have a different pricing system. Therefore, they just launch a little app and everybody just downloads it and Apple takes a piece, or do they have to pay Apple a huge licensing fee to appear on the deck? Maybe that's where Apple will make their money. Yeah. For people who want to raise their visibility onto their deck. I mean, none of this was discussed. It's all open.
Yep.
For okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, that's it. Go ahead.
I mean, it's interesting though that the connected TV marketplace, the big TV companies like Samsung and LG and Sony, Vizio. I mean, what are they going to do about this? I mean, right now, all these over-the-top platforms like Roku and TiVo and Apple TV, Chromecast Fire, they all go over the top. Their connected TV offerings, they're over-the-top offerings, right? You plug in your Apple TV, it wipes out Samsung's interface that they've probably invested millions of dollars in, where Samsung offers apps, and they offer a click to Netflix and a click to YouTube and a global search, and all these other, guys that just plug in with their USB cable, plug right in over the top of that. Where does this place the connected TV marketplace?
Yeah, I think it's maybe even just broader than that. I think it's really an open and closed discussion. We posted a blog post, right after the announcement, and we basically said it's a wake-up call for the closed platforms. And there's this tension that's been happening, in the industry when it comes to the fragmented platforms. Some of them say, hey, we have our own framework for writing UIs, and we have our own templates, and we want you to build apps that look like all the other apps on our platform so our users are familiar with our platform. Our position is that that's a dangerous approach because people are more brand-oriented than they are platform-oriented. So, for instance, I have a 5-year-old daughter, right? And she watches Netflix like every other 5-year-old daughter. And she watches Netflix on iPad and iPhone and Xbox and a smart TV. And she's married to that brand. She doesn't, inside the Xbox, navigate around a whole bunch of different apps. And I think one of the interesting things is, instead of the notion of trying to constrain into a framework and a platform, is very platform centric. It's not user centric. So it's saying like, it's going to be easy for us to maintain, easier for us to support. There'll be less bugs if everyone just looks the same and dresses the same and every app is the same. But it's really interesting because if you look in the game world, it would be nonsensical to say, okay, all games on Xbox have to have the menu in this spot, and they have to all use these colors, and all the Chrome in the UI has to look this way, and you can't do first person. It all has to be, running left to right. They would never do that. And our view is that, and in line with what Apple did this week, is what's the difference between a UI and a game? It's just build a beautiful, immersive experience for your customers, and they'll be able to navigate it. And it really should be customer-centric, the needs of the customer, let them enjoy the experience and get into the experience, instead of platform constrained template for all your business reasons. Focus on the user and let brands just be really creative and create direct relationships with them.
It'll be interesting to see if they how they embrace live streaming like this, on all the live streaming for all the live stream platforms. If those platforms take advantage of the tvOS experience.
Well, there's already rumors that Periscope is imminently will be launching their app for Apple TV.
Yeah, there was a lot of chat the other day. I think we were asking Kayvon from Periscope, right? The founder of Periscope was on, and I definitely was typing in, TV, Apple TV, and it's like the words Apple TV didn't exist. I mean, he said nothing.
Sure.
He said nothing, which means it's going to happen. But so let's talk briefly about interfaces.
Sure.
Anything that you think you'd like to see in this environment? Any kind of innovation? Things that you think that aren't there now? I mean, any kinds. You guys are thinking about user experience all the time. Yeah. So
I think
virtual reality. I mean, but I mean, just plain 2D graphical user interfaces.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you can if you look at sort of the bill of materials inside of that device, it's fairly robust. And I think with the right 3D tool set, you could do some honestly really exciting things on the platform. They showed the sort of gimmicky move the remote and the tile follows the remote and wiggles around sort of thing, which is it's a nice 3D animation. It doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily an affordance for the user. So one of the things that we're really big on is that animation for animation's sake is useless. But using animation and transition as affordances to tell the user that their input is meaningful and to give them insight into what might be happening next can be really powerful. And I think when they showed off that sort of gimmicky tile, it was more a signal to developers like us that, hey, you can really push the envelope here when it comes to 3D animations and transitions as an affordance.
Somebody this morning, or I was looking on Twitter, showed that when you move the remote over the settings button on Apple TV, it has some kind of weird parallax, and it made it look kind of like like an infinity mirror, if you know what that is. Like it had this sort of depth in 3D, and I can't wait to see where that goes as a kind of a. I know it's animation for animation's sake, but it's definitely a sort of a fun little gimmick.
Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Because I think this wraps it up for me. I think I covered all my questions. I just want to point out that there's a difference between the OTT platform, like Chromecast, Roku, Fire, Apple TV, TiVo, PlayStation, and Xbox, and OTT content offerings like Crackle and HBO, and then of course we haven't even broached the topic of what's called the skinny bundle. Like companies like Sling TV, when they're offering a complete interactive interface as an app on the Roku box. I'm curious if Sling TV will show up on Apple TV, and they offer live television. That'll be interesting.
Well, on a related note, I think that there was this little nuanced moment when they unveiled the hardware, and he said, "So today I think his words were something around the lines of, today we're unveiling a new set-top box." And he used the word set-top box. And like everything in these announcements, it's very deliberate and practiced and rehearsed. And immediately I felt, okay, that was a direct shot, sort of at the cable industry in terms of,
what is
a set-top box? Could it be a $200 piece of hardware with all these immersive apps and this paradigm that people are used to on their iPhones? Or does it have to be this RDK, HTML5 kind of closed off world? I think it's going to be interesting to see the way that it pushes perhaps, big cable to start looking at, okay, what do we do in terms of, an app paradigm? What do we do in terms of, user experience? And are standards more important than a user experience? It's going to be really neat to see how that unfolds and how they respond.
Well, I mean, that's the critical political relationship that wasn't stated in any direct, obvious way. Sure. Because Comcast, of course, has their X1 platform, which is their big sort of innovation push, and their X2, but they've been developing apps, but in a closed, third-party sort of secret development out here in Silicon Valley.
Exactly.
And we've been saying through Interactive TV Today in our Conference TV of Tomorrow show, plugging, Comcast. When are you going to open this up? Everybody would love to develop for the cable platform, and they have never been willing to do that. And everybody wonders, have they jumped the shark? But the thing is Apple's had a huge amount of trouble making a relationship with cable. The TiVo had a huge amount of trouble making a relationship with cable and satellite for many, many years, but they finally made those partnerships. But Apple has had a lot of difficulty making those content partnerships, which is why they didn't launch with a huge amount of other content partners this time. But, personally, I think they said, screw it. And they said, we're going to launch this environment and let the market, or let the developers and let people help create the market for us. I am a little concerned, however, because, and like you've said in all your posts on Twitter and things like that when Apple speaks, everybody listens, right? It's a serious thing. But the App Store in a connected TV marketplace has not done very well. Mm-hmm. It has been abysmal. Sure. And the only way I think this is going to work, and believe me, I love apps on TV. I'm a diehard fan of interactive TV, right? But the only way I think this is going to work is if these apps take into account content, television. How are they going to use programming? They can't just be apps about productivity, right? It's got to be about entertainment and productivity, or entertainment and entertainment. That's the big challenge.
Yep. So I do think that it will cause a meaningful splash in the industry when you have the largest company in the world with the cash reserves and investment that they have, who comes out and says this is no longer a hobby, we're investing in this, and they make that statement. There's going to be velocity behind that, and so it'll be interesting to see the waves that it causes.
All right. Well, any other projects you want to mention that are coming up for you guys at Youi TV? Go check out Youi. YOUI. Thank you. YOUI.tv.
And nothing I can mention today, but the next 2 weeks are going to be ferocious in terms of just huge announcements from us. So stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Matt. And also stay tuned to see UI's work at our upcoming conference called the TV of Tomorrow Show in New York City. It will be our one-day intensive. It's on December 3rd. And you can find out what's going on at thetvoftomorrowshow.com, which I'll type in, thetvoftomorrowshow.com. You can also read our news publication at itvt.com and sign up for our free email newsletter, which I founded in 1998, and we just put out our 1,800th issue.
Wow.
I think maybe 18.00, a lot. We've been publishing a lot. I should go track it myself.
That's awesome. I can't wait for the show. We love that show. It's just absolutely tremendous. So
there's your URL over there.
Thank
you. The next show after that, if you can't make New York, is in San Francisco, June 7th and 8th, and that's a 2.5-day show. By the way, we're going to have a lot of live streaming stars, Periscope stars at our event, covering OTT, interface development. Everybody's coming on now, but I got to go.
All right.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to put this out through our publication. Thanks
awesome.
Again, Matt. And
thank you, Tracy.
We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody. This
Bye-bye.
is Tracy Swedlow from Interactive TV Today.